So today our topic of discussion is barriers to communication. Now there are again three different kinds of barriers: intrapersonal barrier, interpersonal barrier, and organizational barrier. Students, I would request all of you to please take a note of it. Intrapersonal barrier means barrier that is causing due to certain issues amongst the people concerned. Say for example, there are again different sub-classification of these barriers. So I'll be discussing a few with you for each of the categories. Now for intrapersonal, certain sub-classification, one is that wrong assumption. Wrong assumption is what? Suppose what happens, you go to a doctor and the doctor says, okay, this medicine is SOS. Now the doctor assumes that you know the meaning of SOS. So obviously you might be knowing the meaning of SOS, but if he is using the term SOS to some person who's in the remote village, maybe he couldn't understand. So what happens is that is a barrier on his part, on the doctor's part. Again, that is a barrier to the concerned patient's part. So this is an intrapersonal barrier that is posing from the person concerned himself or herself. The next thing is that wrong inference is also a sub-classification of intrapersonal barrier. How? Wrong inference. Suppose you find that a particular student is not turning up in the class for a few days. So you come to the conclusion that, oh, he is not coming. That means he might have left the college. But ultimately you find that he might have been assigned a different section altogether. So you come to the conclusion all on a sudden without knowing. So that is a wrong inference on your part. There are certain other intrapersonal barriers like categorical thinking. What is a categorical thinking? Categorical thinking means like you always think that, okay, fine, whatever I know, that is all. Nobody knows better than me in this particular context. So that is, you are thinking on one particular aspect. That is categorical thinking. So the three examples which I shared with you, these are a part of intrapersonal barrier. I repeat once again, barriers which is coming from the particular self. The next classification is interpersonal barrier. Interpersonal barrier is that when there is a emergence of barrier due to two to three persons concerned, they are having a particular thing which is causing, particular issue rather, which is causing as a barrier. How? Say for example, people coming from different cultural background, which is known as barrier arising due to cultural variation. So definitely I might be a Bengali, somebody might be a South Indian. So when we go to a particular place and talk about food styles and food habits, so we might not have that mental matching up. Why? Because we are coming from a different background. What are the other interpersonal barrier? Poor listening skills. Suppose I communicate something and I wanted a response from you, but you are not responding. So what I'll think that, oh my God, he is ignoring me. But actually, what happened? You might have certain issues in listening to it. Now that listening problem might be your own problem, might be a problem in the channel. Got it? So these are certain examples of interpersonal barrier. Now we will come and talk about organizational barrier. Organizational barrier, this is something which you need to understand, which you will be very often finding in cases of working in our everyday life. What are the sub-classification? Number one is too many transfer stations. What is too many transfer stations? Suppose I give you an example. I communicate to your CR that today we are not going to have the class, and instead of that we are going to have it on next Monday at 3 p.m. Now he is the transfer station. Now when the CR is going and telling to ACR, he might have missed some part of it, and he might say that ma'am said that today there won't be a class, and instead of that there would be a class on Monday, but he misses out the part 3 p.m. Then the ACR, when he is communicating to the class, he might miss out again some part of it and say that today we are not going to have the class, and the other part he didn't say. So ultimately, when this message will go to the students, what they'll think that today there won't be any class, but they won't be able to interpret that instead of today there will be a class on the next Monday, and that too at 3 p.m. because due to usage of too many transfer stations, half of the message in between it got omitted. Second is fear of superiors. In an organization, when you work, always we think, oh my God, what my supervisor will say, what my boss will say. See, even in college, you think there might be certain problems in your submission of assignment, anything. But if you are sharing that with your superiors, suppose in your class, on a particular class, your teacher is your superior. So you should share with her or him properly. Instead of that, when you say that, okay, fine, we are not going to say, we are going to hide it away. So that might create a problem. So this is also a barrier, that is fear of superior. Information overload. This is a very common barrier. What happens in an organization, say maybe one person, he is allotted with a hell lot of tasks. So what happens? He gets pissed off. We find when we go to different offices, we find that there might be one person who is loaded up with several assignments or several tasks. As a result, the work is not proceeding further because that person concerned, he is suffering from information overload. Another barrier is very common in organization, that is negative tendencies. What is negative tendency? Negative tendency means, suppose there are groups of people, maybe in your class, maybe in your organization. So suppose if you consider your class to be an organization, so imagine that there is an inter-college or inter-class football tournament. You know that some people, they might not belong to your group, but they're very good at playing football. So what do you think? As you have a negative tendency, oh, they are not my friends, I'm not going to take them. I'm only going to club up and make the team with my friends. So that is a negative tendency what you have. So these are basically the different kinds of barrier. So to sum up, as we have discussed, like you might have gone through the lectures on communication part 1, communication part 2, communication network, and this is the 4th lecture on barriers to communication. So the main important thing is that this is all about your communication. So the definition of communication, levels of communication, flow of communication, communication cycle, formal network of communication, informal network of communication, and at the same time you have barriers to communication. So I am sure that if you are following all these 4 lectures, then the portion of communication would be clear for you. And at the same time, I'll be also sharing handouts for you to make the things clear. Thank you.